Yeah, thank you for turning up to have a look at my presentation. What I've found in quite a lot of businesses is they try and do monitoring and logging, but they don't really understand it. It's like a tick box exercise. So that was the idea of this, what can't you see? So I don't know how many people are in businesses, but do you know if you're actually been breached? Because quite a lot of companies don't understand they've actually had a breach or had a malware attack. Any hands up on that one? No? Good start. Do you have any threats defined? So quite a lot of companies don't define what the actual threats are or any use cases for it. Have any other businesses, have any of you guys done that? A couple of you. Yeah. I do find it few and far between, to be honest. And then, you've got to know how to then monitor against these threats. When I've been to talk to senior stakeholders, they tend to say, when you try and realise, say, where are your threats, or what are your, have you had a breach or anything? They start to panic. There's a sudden realisation of panic in their eyes. And when they realise that when you're going to start doing it, they also have another second panic to say, oh dear, what happens if we have had a breach and we're now finding out two years later? Right? So to do this, we need to do a risk-based approach, and we need to align it to the company strategy. It's not just an IT thing. And quite a lot of people I see, it's more, the CISOs tend to be more IT-based than business strategic-based. Okay. All right. So, just in case you're all not aware, I just wanted to define what a SIEM and a SOC was. So, for monitoring and logging purposes, there is a security incident and event management system that you need to look at incidents and events, two different things. And then you need a good security operations center to manage that. And there's a lot of work you need to deliver to actually build that into security incident management processes. And quite a lot of businesses don't understand that. They'll buy a logarithm or something and just expect it to work. So they tend to do data aggregation and collation of events, but you need to be able to put the right events and logs into it. So there's a lot of work that needs to be developed there to look at how you get the information into the system. So, like I say, on a baseline perspective, tick box exercise, they tend to look at just what does the baseline do. So the providers will normally provide you with the key components. So if we had some kind of incident, how would we know the source and destination and what happened during that path of events? Okay, so they normally have DNS, DHCP, etc., and then take stuff from your security toolings and egress points, ideally for command and control, and ideally between segregated systems within the business. But sometimes they miss that piece out as well, and they just rely on threat feeds and security tooling that goes into it. So the question is, what is missing and what don't we know? Okay, have a think about that one for a sec. I broke it again. There you go. So what I also find is that people don't look at risk-based approach very much. So you need to prioritize your efforts and establish, what is the likelihood and impact of these risks within the business context, okay? And is it cost effective to deliver tools against it? And I think once you've got the eyes on the ground properly, that'll give you a better idea of that. So to do that, you've got to establish the context, the object and scope and boundaries. You've got to identify the risks and risk methods and document it all. And then you've got to assess the risks and develop risk mitigation strategies. And, that doesn't tend to get done a lot, I don't think. And then implement the control measures and stuff like that, and stakeholder reporting and comms. Okay. So if you want to do the SIEM properly, or monitoring and logging properly, there are going to be some things you need to think about over and above just IT basics. So you need to start to build out a strategy that's based on what are your key users with the key data, and the key data and key assets, and ideally get a CMDB. There's a lot of work you need to deliver before you actually can even think about implementing a SIEM and a SOC. And then start to look at threat analysis. So what are your threats? Let's start from the beginning and do a design. What are your threats? What does your solutions currently look like? And have you done all the health standard checks there? And identify the goals of what you want the SIEM to deliver, rather than just going, it monitors all my logs and we've got a threat feed that detects indicators of compromise. Because key businesses, that doesn't then take your business into account. So it doesn't look at aligned to your security incident management plans. It doesn't understand what a P1, P2 is. They don't correlate it properly. And it doesn't look at internal attack vectors. So it doesn't look at, if I took something out of a database, is that a P1 or a P2? Should I have done that? Nor, if you do that by default, that won't get seen. And to do a lot of this, you've got to assess the organisation, compliance, what really matters to you, and start to look at network diagrams and system diagrams that may not exist. So you've got to start to create them as well. And data flow diagrams, I don't find they exist a lot in businesses, and what the key data is. So to start doing that, one of the key things that's a precursor that not tends to be done is understanding where your critical assets are. So you need to start to identify the critical assets, and find out what's missing, and start doing an asset inventory and asset mapping exercise with data flows. That could be ITAM and a CMDB. But there are tools that can start to do that for you. So ServiceNow and a few others that can do audits. But ideally, you need a dynamic asset inventory, not a static one. Yep. And also the other key areas that seem to be missed are policy. So acceptable use linked into that, and then define your use cases for that, so you know what an incident looks like if someone does something by accident or nefariously. And also link that into your security incident management plans. We also need to have regular campaigns and people and tools together to make it safe for people to note their, to report incidents. And link door cards and stuff into the SIEM, so you know where people are moving to and from within the business. So I think the point I was trying to make was to make sure we design what you want first, think about the cost versus benefit, understand what the risk is, do the likelihood and impact, and protect your key assets and systems, and show due diligence and due care, because that can go a long way if you breached a lot of data. And also, you need to keep your eyes on the ground to do this. So I think monitoring and logging and SIEM and SOC are key. You would want to do this initially rather than later. You might prioritise other security controls, but unless you know what's going on, you'll probably find you don't actually know if you've been breached. So it'll help you enhance security, help with compliance and audit. You can even start to make it do operational efficiency after a while, because you can actually say, actually we could do that better. in different areas of the business, and I've seen you can use different tools off the top of the SIEM to get that information out of the SIEM, the data lake, if you like. It also gives accountability and transparency. Forensic analysis, a little bit. That's going to need an extra massive data store, and it helps with your risk management. I can't use my laptop very well, unfortunately. But any questions?
Yeah. Have you ever seen what sort of company would tend to actually document the level of application diagrams without
I would say, what was the question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, you mentioned data flow diagrams there. I don't think I've ever properly seen one. In the designs, you might see something that's like a DFD and an HLD, but are they maintained? And I was wondering, in your experience, where have you tended to see one?
Yeah. No, you're right. It is few and far between. And that's where security architects can help, by security by design, privacy by design in businesses, and they don't seem to do that. They do it by compliance and pen testing. You're absolutely right. So this is what I was saying about the key things. Not only is it the monitor and login, but you've got to know your business first. You've got to know where your data is, where your data flows are, And I have helped businesses do that, but like you say, it's few and far between. So, I think we need to start looking where your key assets are, where your key data is, and trying to get people to start. I talk about process, build them processes in to the designs, I think. Because one of the other things is missing as well is the network diagrams. Sometimes network diagrams have disappeared as well. So, yeah.
So this is great, right? And so the way I would handle this stuff is that I would handle... So this is really cool, right? And the way I would engineer to get the stuff you're talking about is to use P3 incidents, like let's say mid-level instance, and I will run them as P1s, and I will put half of the team on it, and we will do all that stuff during the incident. So we will do diagrams, we map things, we fix things, we build stuff. And in a weird way, you actually get a lot of those signals, and you do that risk-based analysis. The interesting thing is because you're driving off real incidents, you get a really good sense for what matters and what doesn't matter, right? Yeah. But the key is what you're describing, risk-based analysis, understand the stuff. But I think in practice, if you follow the kind of incidents that exist, it's a great signal. But you have to put half your team on it because you have to fix. Like, I kind of view the incidents as an opportunity to fix stuff, get stuff done. And we would do more things in a 1 day or 5 day or 2 week incident than we would in months.
No, you're right. And I think that's the wrong way to do it, right? Because you're actually doing it after the effect, not before the effect. What I'm saying is security by design. So with the SIEM and stuff, you ask the question, you use the SIEM as a pivot to ask the business, where is your key data? Where are your key assets? What do you want to protect and how do you want to protect it?
One quick question. In the kind of cloud and application space, we're seeing a lot of adoption of observability, where observability tools like OpenTelemetry can automatically document what systems are connected to what systems. Have you seen any companies start to look at embedding that kind of stuff coming out of the app world and the cloud world into the more kind of traditional SIEM areas?
Yes, the cloud, yeah. So, right, so the cloud can actually help if it's better than on-prem, right? So you can actually get some of the assets better. So it actually helps the cause. And so many times you have to ask the question, so we're implementing this tool, when are we going to get the security logs from it and what can we get from it? Because what I also see, if we don't embed security in by design at the start, the things that we buy, we haven't got enough information to actually feed into the SIEM to get what we want, and we have to pay millions of pounds extra to get it. But yeah, you're right. It helps. Yeah, definitely.
Quick question. Why would you manage assets from a dynamic approach rather than a static approach?
Well, static's a point in time. So you do it a week later, a month later, them assets probably have changed. Joiners, movers, leavers, old legacy systems, new systems being implemented. How big is your enterprise? How it's going to be difficult, right? So ideally you want automated CMDBs and tools in there. Otherwise, it's out of date.
Maybe we can have one more question.
So say you have a startup, right? At what point from the creation of your company should you start thinking about hiring security engineers? Because a lot of the things that you're mentioning, security by design and stuff like that, a software engineer should be able to put measures in place by design, to have some kind of protection regardless, right? I'm talking maybe encryption of PII data and stuff like that. These should be things that software engineers do. So at one point, what level of risk should I be at to really consider, okay, I need a security architect on this to make absolute sure that all of those things are done and I'm not taking too much of a risk?
Yeah. Well, this is regarding monitoring and logging. I think you probably need to do that quite quickly, right? Because what you're trying to say there is, let's put security encryption in. What if data is being exfiltrated by encryption? You won't see it. So I would suggest, yes, make sure you do a health check and make sure things are right. But again, it's up to the business, right? So what risk do they want to take? How much data have they got? How much do they want to breach? How can they afford to go bankrupt? If you show due diligence, due care with your eyes on the ground, you probably know where your weaknesses are. You know where your data is. And I think that's a really good place to start.
Thank you so much, Richard. And thank you everyone for your questions.
Cheers.